Welcome, Jody. So good to have you here. Welcome to the Light Up podcast, my darling.
Thank you, Amy. It's lovely to be here with you.
I want to start. I mean, you've been a teacher of mine. One of my earlier teachers, I'm going to say, like, it's coming on close to 20 years, I would say. I used to go to yoga classes in Byron Bay when I lived there in my early to mid 20s, and Jody was one of my yoga teachers back then. But it's been an ongoing journey, and I've loved our deepening relationship over the years. From you continue to teach me, and you've also come into the yoga business teaching yin and so forth. So what I love about you, Jodes, is not only that you have so much wisdom to share and lived experience to share across many different areas that I feel are so essential to our well-being and to this path, but you do it with the way that you teach. You're so unapologetically in your skin. You speak your truth, you walk your talk. And I find that being in your presence and having conversations, it's very, very refreshing. And I love that. So, where I want to start today is really, what we're bringing through a lot of the time on this podcast and how it's been flowing is about how we can really live in alignment with our soul, doing the things that light us up. And I know that you are someone that's created many things in your life. You are a creative entrepreneur, and it's very, very inspiring. But I'd love to know from you, in your experience, what has been the key ingredients, let's say the requirements, to really get into alignment with who you are here to be and living in alignment with your soul?
That's a great question, Amy. And I think probably the biggest key for me is discomfort and mistakes. I find when things go well for me, it's easy to get into that ego place. It's easy for me to lose sight of me and to get caught up in what the outside world is telling me is success and that measure of my worth. And in my life, there's been a lot of loss and change and mistakes. And through that, I have to go in. And whenever I am called to go in, what it does is lead me to connect to what is it that I want. And I've been trained in the basics of Chinese medicine with the yoga. I teach the Qi and then the yin yoga, but also Ayurveda. And both of those trainings are based around the elements. They're different elements, but there's a huge mirroring of the seasons. So for me, it's been the connecting with nature that brings out my true nature. And the closer I stay to those elements, the closer I feel I get to myself. So it's definitely been mistakes and loss that brought me to the yoga world and the spiritual world and the deeper digging that I do. But really, I think to show up, for many years, I felt like I had to show up and perform. And it wasn't until, I was doing all of that performing and it wasn't filling my cup. It was looking great on paper. I was looking like a success to everybody, but feeling empty inside. And so, through, I think, lived experience, through the process of aging, because I do think life has its way with us, and in some ways it teases us. In the 20s, it gives us that beautiful pitta which is the fire element in Ayurveda. It gives us that confidence to think we can do anything, the world is our oyster. And then with age, and especially now the age I'm at now, which is the Vata phase, which is a much softer, it's ruled by the elements of air and space. I know that everything is softer and lighter, and it's not so much about me going in fiery and hard. It's me getting still and being open to being a part of this greater world that I'm part of. So, even the name for your podcast, Light Up, it's not about me always being instrumental in that lighting up. It's me being open to the fact that I'm able to be lit up. So that being able to have the grace now with age to really know that I am a vessel and that I am able to share things with others. But a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing is not so much from this thinking place anymore. It's just from a place of what comes to me.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And that's how, and I think, we both operate in that way, and it's so refreshing. And it's interesting how it does come with age in many ways. And a lot of people that listen to my podcast and are in my world and coaching clients and so forth are in more of that middle phase of their life where, they've done the things. And it's interesting you say that about the performative aspects of yoga, let's say, as an example, or performative aspects of life, where we look outside for that external validation, where we've put so much energy into holding a sense of, what this container that we're in looks like from the outside and how we are living our life. And there's a shift. I feel like you reach this point where you start to not give a shit about that. And there's this deeper calling to go within that you can't ignore. You can try. And I'd love for you to speak about that for a moment, because I know you'd said to me once that when you met yin, when you came to yin, it was like this missing ingredient, you found this puzzle piece. And we've both come from a place where we've taught quite dynamic styles of yoga, which is great. But this shift into more of an introspective, being willing to slow down, being willing to go into the silence, to sit in the void, which for many can be really scary. What can you offer? Because you are brilliant at this. I mean, this is a big part of what you do, is holding space for teachers to incorporate this into their practice. So I know you work with a lot of students. What can you offer here, and why this is so important at this time, why this is so needed, and why we have so much resistance to this?
Well, I think, Amy, for me, it's right back to the basics of TCM. It's the yin and the yang, and one can't be without the other. And I think in the West, we've literally got our foot stuck on that accelerator, and it's yang. And I think, with the whole way that women's lives changed and they became professionals, we really exploded out of our yin into this yang. And I think with anything, we tend to go all the way out and then we need to come back in. And I think very much those middle years of life are more yang. They're about, if you want to get married and have children, they're the years you do it. And then as we age, we are preparing for the end of life. So we need to get more yin. And I think with yoga, it's about, when you look at all of the true yogis, they would have done a lot of that strong practice in their formative years. And then as they aged, they came more into those reflective still practices. that was where you really amped up the pranayama and the pratyahara, so I think if you've been a yogi, there's a natural part of you that goes, okay, I am feeling into this is the time for stillness, but that resistance to stillness has to be met with acceptance to resistance. I really love Tara Brach. She has a meditation that she does, and I still do it regularly. And it's called the Reign of Self-Compassion, and it's an acronym for recognizing that resistance. And then allowing that resistance, and then investigating, where is that resistance in my body? How does it feel? Getting familiar with it, and then nurturing and nourishing yourself in that, rather than what I find in the West is, oh, there's something I don't like about myself. Let's see if I can just dislike it till it disappears, or really get yang and down on it and overpower it, rather than just meeting it where it's at with a yin approach of like, hi, it's hard. I come to my mat and I want to be in stillness, but there's resistance. Okay, well, let's try. Let's drip, 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 because in the 5 elements in Chinese medicine, water is so powerful, and water is the deep place of stillness. It's the most predominant element in winter. But we go slowly into it. We move through autumn. It's a slow, slow process down into winter. And I think what happens is we don't allow ourselves the season to come into the stillness. It's, as my teacher, Dr. Claudia Welsh, would say, it's learning to use the medicine of subtraction. How can I get a little stiller and a little slower in my own life? As well as on my mat? Can you go outside and just sit and look at something really beautiful in nature? And can you let nature show you how to be still? I find if you want to learn how to be still, try to be in places where there's stillness, or there's something beautiful that calms your ears, because your ears are the gateway to stillness. So, for me, it's birdsong. I can listen to birdsong all day. It's my beautiful garden, the flowers in my garden. So if I find it hard to be still inside, then I take myself outside. And I don't ask of myself stillness when there's a lot going on, because then I'm setting myself up for disappointment. And I learned this sort of being around animals, is you don't set them up for disappointment or failure. So don't do it to yourself. So on a day where you've got a lot of stress in your life, don't expect yourself to come straight to a yin practice. Maybe do a little bit more of a stronger practice, or do a breath practice, which is the gateway, the lung and the large intestine. That's the gateway into the kidney and the bladder, which is the water, which is the stillness. But I think the breath is always the magic. That's where the potion is in the breath. If your breath is escalated, if you're short, sharp breathing, you're in that sympathetic nervous system. Your body thinks it's in danger. It cannot stay still. It doesn't make any sense to the DNA to ask it to stay still.
And on that, with the nervous system, because I know that you're very interested in this as well, and the more that I understand about the nervous system, the more I get how it relates so much, being in a space where we can really tend to our nervous system and soothe our nervous system and get to know where we are, whether in that window of tolerance or not. Having a really intimate relationship with our nervous system in terms of and how that equates to what we're allowing ourselves in life to receive and to open up to. And I think that is so important, particularly as women on this journey. We are givers. and I know that you can speak to this on, from an Ayurvedic perspective as well. There's a lot that we're offering out all the time. Our energy is going very externalized, and, shifting into this place. And I see this with yin as well, and with these more deeper contemplative aspects of yoga, is opening up our capacity as women to receive, and to receive guidance, and to receive nourishment. And I know that you're big on that, because you also make incredible food and you're a cookbook author. So nourishment is so important. Have you found that connection yourself with, in your journey with this, with the nervous system, in terms of, and for women, and how important it is that we open up our vessel to be able to also receive and to nourish ourselves?
Absolutely. So I can speak to it from two points of view. I'll talk to it, first of all, from the Ayurvedic point of view, which is the kapha, which is the mother, the giver, very comfortable with going out with one's energy to help others, the elements of earth and water. But the problem is with that, there's not enough going inward. So then there's a depletion that happens in the kapha person, where they don't quite know what it is they like, what fills them up. And so there's a bit of a sense of they're always checking in with someone else if they're okay. And then so their nervous system is never settled in some way, or it's really heavy and dull and lethargic, because there's no real connection to one's own passion and fire and spark, because they're so focused outward on everybody else. And then from a Chinese medicine perspective, looking at this nervous system, it's about, if you're always giving out, that's the earth element again. And if the earth element is giving out, it's often because it wants to receive back in. And there's a selfish part in someone who's always giving out but won't let others give to them. And what happens is, if the earth isn't a good, strong container, then the water gets out of balance. And as you know, the water is the nervous system in Chinese medicine. So we have to make sure that at this point of digestion and nourishment, we know how to nourish ourselves first and foremost. And that is being able to digest conversations that we have with other people. How do we feel in our body when we have a conversation with someone else? Is that friendship that we're in soothing and nurturing us, or is it depleting us? Because if we're in a situation like that and we can't let that go and step away from that, then we're exhausted, we're depleted, and then that impacts the kidneys and the jing, which are stored in the kidneys. And then the nervous system is all over the place. So for me, you can't get to stillness if you haven't got a place of feeling satiated and nourished deeply within yourself. If you are still externally focused on, I'm buying a new dress, that'll make me feel great, I'm doing a new course, which I'm very good at, that'll make me feel happier and smarter and bigger and fuller, or I'm buying something new for my home, and I'm still accumulating and thinking that my deep satisfaction is coming from outside of myself, then there's always going to be the emotion of the nervous system and the water element, this fear that if I can't get these outside things, I'm not going to be okay. And I'm not going to be okay in this still, soft, silent place. Whereas if I know that I am connected with Mother Earth and she provides me, and the whole world is providing for me, because I have a trust in a greater mother and a greater community that I'm energetically connected to, that is not made up of this material stuff that we've been mesmerized with in the West, then I can sit in deep stillness and my nervous system can be relaxed enough to know that I can survive the winter, which is the water element, without all of these extra things. And I can reflect, and I can dream, and I can plant the seeds of new things that I want to grow in my life. And then come spring, there will be enough natural energy for those things to then burst forth without me pushing and forcing and having to have my will and my way with how I'm going to be in the world. But because I've rested, there'll be a natural movement and a natural flow into where I'm meant to go and grow. That will come.
And this takes me into what we're moving into now with autumn and the importance of letting go. And then, obviously then we're going to go into the stillness of winter before we open up again into the spring. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of this time? What is the medicine right now that we are needing to receive, to let ourselves receive?
So autumn is such an important time of the year for us, because it's a time where we need to pause, and we've come from this earth phase where we've seen what's nourished us. We've really hopefully got our digestive system into a good place. And then in autumn, what happens is we get very clear about our values, our worth, what is very important to us, because we need only to take what is precious with us into winter. Anything that's draining us and straining us and stressing us now needs to go, because it's going to place stress on the body in the cooler months. We don't have the energy of the sun, the yang, that we have in summer. We don't have that on our side in the deep yin of winter. So in autumn, we're evaluating. We're looking, am I more yin? And I let go of things too easily, which I'm definitely guilty of. It's like, don't need this, don't need that, don't need this, don't need that.
Yeah.
And, that can sometimes not be the wisest decision. And then there's others in the yang that are holding on really, really tightly to relationships, to careers, to versions of themselves that they believe they need to keep being, to things in their home. So this is when we want to look around, and it's a good time to just reduce clutter. And I say that looking around, and there's clutter everywhere around me. And we want to create some breathing space. The lungs need to breathe. They need to have this sense of feeling free. So we need to take and pay a lot of attention to the respiratory system at this time of year. So I really advise all of the yogis and everybody really to have a gentle breath practice, whether that be alternate nostril breathing in the early part of the morning, where we can really start to work into the lung system. And it's a great time of year to get up and get moving, even though it will feel like the time where you want to stay in bed the most. You want to get your lungs nice and strong for this time of the year. You want to keep your skin nice and moisturized as well, because if there's anything out of balance at this time of year, we will see dryness in the body. We'll see it in the skin. We will see it in the hair, we'll see it in the nails, but we'll also see it in the digestive system, and it'll show up as constipation. From an Ayurvedic point of view, it'll show up as gas and bloating. It might even show up as some anxiety. In Chinese medicine, the emotion of this time is grief. So the thing that you can do for yourself is really allow yourself tears now. Because if you don't allow yourself those tears that want to bubble up to the surface naturally now, because this is the season, then what happens is every time a tear falls, it takes us into our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. So if you're not crying and you're telling yourself you should be over the loss of a relationship, the loss of a parent, the loss of whatever it is, and there's still grief in your body, this is the time you need to give your body permission to let that go. So a lot of people think of autumn as letting go of stuff. For me, it's letting go of that tight hold that a lot of us have on what emotions are appropriate and what emotions aren't okay. And tears are absolutely natural and needed at this time of year. So I invite people to give themselves time and space to just reflect. Is there anything that they, need to, have they fully grieved the loss of a relationship? Have they fully grieved the loss of a parent? Have they fully grieved the loss of their, if you're a perimenopausal woman, the loss of your vitality at this point in time. If you're a mother and your children have left home and gone overseas on trips or to university, the loss of your children as they grow up. There's so many things that we minimize when it comes to letting go.
Even the loss of your old self, old identities, roles that we thought we needed to play in other relationships. And I think that's such a big one as well, the old selves.
Absolutely. And you would know this, Amy. You've just sort of come out of a business. You're going into a new business. There's the loss of that Amy into a new Amy. And even if it's a good change, there's always a part. There has to be an autumn in every season of everything. You birthed that job, you birthed that business, you birthed that, so much of that. That was the spring and the summer. Then there has to be the late summer of the preparing to let it go. And then there's the autumn. And then there's that deep winter of stillness before the new thing is fully born again. And this is how it goes. So autumn in every chapter of our life is extremely important. And, for me, autumn in Ayurveda is Vata time, so it is the time where the medicine for Vata, which when it's out of balance, it can be anxiety, it can be fear, it can be the inability to sit still, it can be the inability to stop talking, it can be the inability to move. It gets quite frozen or it can't stop moving. It's an irregularity. But the medicine for that is creativity and nature and ghee. So these are the things. And in Chinese medicine, the medicine for this time of year is the white foods. So cauliflower is great because it's shaped like the lungs and helps keep the lungs nice and dry. And foods that penetrate down into the ground keep us grounded down at this time of the year. And then making sure we've got plenty of moisture, so warming up our food, having lovely warm soups and congis and khichuris and dal, and just making sure that there's a lot of oil in things. So beautiful ghee added to things and warming spices like ginger and peppers and chili and clove and cardamom and star anise, all of these cinnamon, these are all going to help warm the body from the inside out and moisturize the body from the inside out. So people think if their skin is dry, they need to moisturize from the outside. And yes, that will help to use beautiful, good quality sesame oil or some almond oil on the skin, but we want to moisturize from the inside out. So we want to make sure that we are cooking in good oils and that we're, you know, giving ourselves plenty of time and stillness. We're not eating on the run, that we're slowing down that yoga practice and we're doing more grounding, you know, that we're not just like full on vinyasa, because outside, this is the windy season. So, you know, we need to slow it all down. In Ayurveda, we treat with opposites. So if things are moving quickly outside, we're slowing ourselves down. So, you know, doing warmer practices, you know, if you're doing yin, making sure that you're really, really warm as you practice your yin, and doing, you know, some nice heart stuff. So you've got that fire to melt any of this cold resistance that can come up in the metal element. You know, that metal element can get very, very like icy and resistant and judgmental. You know, there's that large intestine that's always pointing, should be doing this, should be doing that. I'll just clean up and make everything look good, but I won't dive any deeper into what's messy within me. As long as I've got my hair done and my clothes all nice and my car's clean and my house is clean, everything's okay. But, you know, I encourage people in autumn to dig a little deeper. What are those things that are sort of, you know, getting under your skin?
I love this. And, you know, when you were talking about the grief as well and how important that is at this time, and to be in safe places, whether that's with yourself or with other people, where you can, you know, we tend to still shut down the tears or apologize for the tears. And as you said, I mean, that is the medicine of this time, is letting it come up. And I always, if I'm facilitating, whether this is in group work or one-to-one or retreats, and I know this is the same for you, Jody, and you're a counselor too, you know, we celebrate the tears. And I love what you said about, what did you say about every tear? Is that thing you said about every tear that you shed?
Yes. So if we resist our tears, it keeps us in our sympathetic nervous system. So it's actually saying you're in danger. You haven't got time to be sitting around having a cry. The tiger's coming. And our DNA doesn't know the difference. You know, we've progressed. We've come to a point of way more safety than our DNA was programmed for. So now it's like, if you feel for tears, have those tears and be around people you trust enough to have those tears. And if you don't trust them enough, then take yourself away to a place where you can go to the bathroom and have a few tears. Or if that's not appropriate, then setting aside time and stillness when you come home of an evening to go back to it and revisit it. And it doesn't mean you have to get involved in a story. I think a lot of the time people then get up into a story and there's blame and there's shame and there's all of this stuff. But it's just, Vata wants to move things through you. That's its job, is to move. And the moment you start policing with your mind what is allowed to come in and be felt and what's not, then that's where things get very messy. And that is often where you'll see people with big digestive issues, and they'll be so focused on the food they're eating, but they won't have any eyes on this emotional landscape of when, you know, often when my clients come to see me, I'm like, when was the last time you cried? Oh, I'm not really a crier. But I can tell you everything I've eaten for the last 24 years. And I'm worried about having weight on. And this is often a thing with my Kapha clients. You know, they're building weight because they're not letting anything move through. They've become rocks rather than soft soil. You
Mm.
know, we've got the elements of earth and water, and then it becomes a hard rock that keeps building. And then the fat becomes more and more of the protection of no one's going to get to know me. I'm going to know everybody else really intimately and know
Mm.
their needs and wants before they even speak them. But I have no idea who I am, because all I'm going to be is the happy, jolly helper,
Yeah. Yeah. Who
you
everybody
know?
else needs me to be, right? That's the
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, you
Mm.
know, when it comes to, you know, these big times of people's lives, like when their children leave home, which is a very big time for Kappa people, they'll often see a whole lot of digestive stuff and weight gain.
Mm.
And it's not because of the food they're eating,
Mm.
it's because they're not allowing themselves to
Mm.
feel
Mm. Mm.
and let those emotions move through and speak and say to people, I feel this.
Mm.
But it's trusting and it's knowing, as you said before, Amy, it's that thing of trusting those who are trustworthy
Mm.
and being able to read a room and know if you're in a safe place. And
Mm.
I always say to people, if you are not with people who you can honestly be
Yeah.
open and authentic with, then I'd kind of ask you to reevaluate what you're doing. You know, I don't want to work in a place where I can't be who I am.
Yeah, and
You know,
that's the most freeing thing, Jodes. You know, you and I have had conversations over the last few years when the world, kind of tipped upside down, really, and shook itself about a little bit, and things fell away. Relationships fell away, old identities fell away, and there was this kind of rebellion, really, to look within and follow your own truth, not what the world is telling you, not what anybody else is telling you. And, I know that we've spoken about that there's a grieving in that as well. And this real requirement to boldly step into and move forward with what's my truth here, rather than somebody else telling me what I need to be doing or should be doing. So this path, it's not easy, it's not. And for those that are on this path, you would know that as well. It's not an easy path, but when you understand this and the importance of this, you know that there's no other way. Because otherwise, it's denying self, and it's denying your truth and what you know to be real. And I've loved, the conversations that we've had around that. It's radical self-care, and it's such a requirement with where we're heading at the moment and the way the world is shifting. It's to really to be in your truth and to live in your truth. And yeah, I've loved our conversations around that as well, which is
and I think it takes a lot of courage to let go of other people's opinions, other
yeah.
people's, you know, and I know I can only speak for myself here, but for me, it's been these years of these practices that have led me to know that I can take a lot of information in. And it's again this distillation process that has to happen. But at the end of the day, Amy, it has to sit in my gut.
Yeah.
It has to digest in my body, and it has to resonate in my heart. I can't tell you what resonates in yours. I can't tell you what speaks to you. I can only know for myself my truth, and I can't impose that on anyone else.
Mm.
And I have spent countless hours of my life reading, researching, traveling, and finding what is true to me.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And I will seek counsel from people. I will research. I will do many things. But thank goodness now I feel strong enough and brave enough and soft enough to just listen to me. And allow others that privilege as well. You know, there were many years where I thought it was my job to convince others to believe differently. Whereas now it is, I believe that energy is like a magnet and it gathers those who have the same energy to it. And I trust that, you know, it doesn't mean I don't stumble and fumble and fall and go outside of that window of tolerance. But I also know that there's practices now that I can do to bring me back to myself and that truth. And often it is in nature and in stillness that I can, you know, find my way back to the greater picture, you know, because I think when I get so self-absorbed, which I have done in the past, that's when I feel lost and disconnected from everybody. And I think now it's, for me, it's not just about me, it's for the greater good of this place that we're living in. And, you know, everything I do in my day is about being of service. You know, I want to be of service, and I know now that I can't be of service in the way I want to be by hustling, by bookending every appointment and filling every minute of my life, because if I'm doing that, there's no space for what comes to me in those quiet, gentle moments that says, this is what needs to be done now. Or perhaps try this, or go here today, or speak to this person. And I'm moving from a different kind of compass, really, than I was before. All the time before was much more mind generated. And now it's a lot more felt sense.
I love that, Jodes. And I feel like I'm really on track with that as well. I can relate so much. And I wonder, is that our pitta energy? And, you know, and we learn through our experiences. I mean, I ran a business, grew a business over 15 years where I thought that I needed to do everything. You know, I've been told before, and I can, you know, I know I've got this energy about me, and you could probably relate to this, where I just believed I could do everything, that I didn't need anybody else to do it. You know, I was told before that when I was in my mother's womb, I thought that I could grow myself, you know, and so, and I felt like, oh, I'll just do it all. I'll just do it all, you know, and there we go. I grew a business and I did every part of it for a long period of time. It took a lot for me to then step back and bring in other people. And now as I'm moving into this second phase of my life and learning about, you know, not just from an Ayurvedic perspective, but even from like a human design perspective, like my energy is not designed to work like that. It's not. It feels like it is. And now it's a bit of a reprogramming for me to go slower, to rest more, and that actually, you know, and counterintuitively for me, but that actually paves the way for more success and, let's say, productivity and flow. But that's been a big journey. I mean, what's your experience of this, being a pitta energy yourself? Because I know, Jodes, I know you could do all the things and you've created so many things. Like, talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, so pitta, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, it's an Ayurvedic constitution made up of the elements of fire and water. And the qualities are hot, sharp, oily, spreading. And pitta rules transformation. So someone who is a pitta constitution sees problem, but is already starting solution. And it's swift, it's fast, it's efficient, and yeah, it it's done without even really thinking too much about it. Whereas the other constitutions, Vata, they're great at imagining a solution, that they're ruled by air and space. So they're very clear, they're very light, but getting started, they can just dream about it all day long. And Kapha is earth and water. So they're the great workers. So the Pitta will create the transformation, and then the Kaphas will day in, day out go to the job, do the job. You know, they're very much keep the wheels turning in a business. So for me, this has been, I suppose, the biggest struggle and the biggest, skin shedding, I suppose, of walking that bridge between, perimenopause and menopause. And, for those who don't know, that from 0 to 18 is the Kapha years that rules security and stability and growth in the body, and then 18 to around 45, 50 are the Pitta years, where we transform our lives, and then 50 onwards are the Vata years, which are more forest dweller. People come to us for wisdom. They're the years of creativity, but we're getting lighter and we're connecting closer to the heavens, so we can prepare ourselves to finally leave the physical plane. And so for me, walking this bridge from the fiery me, the 100 miles an hour, do a multitasking queen, everything like a bat out of hell kind of thing, into this Vata phase of my life, it was like up and down and round and round. And it kind of had to be a burning out, really. And it was hard. It was sad. It was, me being, wanting to still be that version of myself. There were so many problems that I was sure the world needed me to fix, and there was so many projects I was sure I still needed to do, and on and on and on and on. But there was also this running out of energy, and there was the more meditation and the more yin and the more time in nature, the more I could actually get really honest with myself and realize I didn't want to do it like that anymore. I didn't want to approach it like that anymore, because when I left space and when I embraced grace and when I let the forces that be have more involvement in my life and I gave room for magic to happen, so much magic happened. I just thought it was a bit of a joke, really.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, but this has been going on all the time. And I've just been like,
fighting it.
smashing my way through it, going, I can do it. I've got it. This. And, I really think I've done a lot of work in the manifestation world, for about the past, I suppose, well, definitely the past 6 years that I've been down here. And it wasn't just like, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we've got a magic potion. I did a lot of stuff of recognizing these shadowy parts of myself that didn't believe magic was possible in my life, that didn't believe that, I had a lot of stories sitting in my subconscious that I needed to look at, and I needed to reflect on, and I needed to choose to think different things. So I've done a lot of, personal work, both with trauma and, even on my own counseling journey. And I think that whole thing about giving up that pitta, but realizing it's still in me. It still allows me to have the passion for things, you know? I might not approach them in the same way, but I have this, it's got to glow and shine and have a standard of it that really speaks to the quality of what I want to be delivering, you know? So it's yeah, it's hard to embrace that Vata chapter because I think, Amy, sometimes it feels a little bit light and all over the place. It's so irregular, and sometimes it's a bit scary because things feel frightening in the Vata phase, whereas Pitta kind of, it might have been a bit scary, but you just like didn't even think about that. It was just like you go, you know, the fire gives you so much fuel towards that passion, you know, that the fear is there, but you're not even looking sideways, you know, it's just this blinkers on. So I think now it's about, you know, using the vulnerability as a gauge, and, you know, also being able to speak openly and honestly, I think is an amazing gift in a time where there is so much fragility in people. And I think there's shame around that, and there's, you know, this thing that if I keep it a secret, it might not be so bad. And I think now being able to show up and go, I'm changing and I'm trying this. I don't know what's happening. I feel a bit scared, but I'm doing it anyway. I think that is a gift that we give to other women and other people who want to be doing it differently. So, you know, the Pitta hates when I talk like that. You know, the Pitta's like, just don't be talking like that. That's just stupid. And people don't need to know about that. Thanks. Let's just talk about when everything's ready to go and it's all good. But it's showing up in the wobbliness, you know, it's the trying things and knowing, okay, well, they might not work. They might just fail, but it's not just showing up when everything's together and going, hi, look at me, it's all organized now. So I think that, you know, that Pitta, it's still there strongly. It still has very loud voices for me that I'm not got enough going on, that I should be. And when I hear that, I know it's very much the Pitta front and center. You know, and it takes a lot for me to be gentle with the Vata. So I give myself that Pitta in the time of day that Pitta reigns, you know, so 10 to 2, that's where I do my heady work. You know, that's where I really get in, and when things have got to be done, it's 10 to 2. And then between 2 and 6, which is the Vata time of day, I give myself the time to really connect into the creative stuff, where if I want to do things differently, or I really want to, you know, call stuff in and connect and really listen, or I want to write creatively, I give myself that time. And then in the Kapha time, which is that slower, heavier time, 6 to 10 in the morning, that's when I do my physical stuff. So I do my yoga practice, I walk my dog, you know, I get in the ocean, because especially in the cooler months, my head can get a bit heavy and dull, and, you know, I can get a bit down if I'm not taking care of that mental health. So I become very aware of these times of day to take care of all those parts of my constitution, you know, the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha.
I love that. I mean, so many incredible tips. I mean, that's helped me so much in just navigating that with your day. For people that want to find you, Jody, because I don't want to take up any more of your time. For people that want to, you know, be in your world a little bit more, learn more about these things, and particularly for those who don't know what their constitution is. I mean, where can people get in touch with you, and what's the best way?
Sure. So they can go to my website, jodyvassallo.com, and there is on that website on the Ayurveda page, there's a dosha chart, so they can, and with instructions of how to go through the chart. And I recommend they go through it twice, do it one from when they were a child and one from now, and then they'll be able to see when they're a child, their constitution or the prakriti, and then now, which they may see some differences, and that'll show up their imbalance or the vikriti. And if they want to follow me on social media, I'm at Jody Vassallo Beautiful Food on Instagram and Facebook. And yes, I do yoga teacher trainings, yin yoga teacher trainings down on the far south coast where I live. I'm in Tilburg, but I hold them in Narooma and Canberra, and then up in Brisbane as well. And I run retreats. I'm planning a yoga retreat to Japan in October, which will be really lovely. We're going to family yoga school in Tokyo. I run retreats, camping retreats as well. So lots of different things. And I'm starting a podcast, so you'll be able to get me in your ears nice and soon too.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Jody. I get so much every time we chat, anytime I'm in your world, there's always more that I receive, and I love that. So thank you for just sharing, more about who you are and the wisdom that you bring through, and keep doing the incredible work, because it is lighting up. Oh, that's the question I want to ask. I feel like this question I'm going to ask every guest that comes on. I'd love to know, what in your world, what's lighting you up at the moment?
Look, the rain lights me up, because it lights my garden up, and where I live is so incredibly beautiful and green at the moment. So nature is that force for me. It is my fuel that keeps everything in some kind of equilibrium. My dog, Cliff, is a huge source that lights me up, and my horse, my animals, my people in my world who don't believe exactly the same thing as I do, but are just here to show up to create a better space and place from a really good place in their heart. That really lights me up. The teachings of the people who've come before me that I can read and that continue to inspire me. And poetry's really, really lighting me up. I've got the biggest crush on Andrea Gibson and Mary Oliver, and women who just have a way with words that, just really can soothe my heart. So, and communing with other women, it's gold for me.
I love that. I love that too. Thank you so much, Jody. I'm so, so grateful. And we will connect again very soon. But thank you for generously offering your love and your time and your wisdom today.
Thanks, Amy. Have a beautiful day.
You too, darling.